Consistent and inconsistent behaviors. The MSR document distinguishes between behaviors that are present, behaviors that are absent, and behaviors that are actively inconsistent with the standard. In this video, we go through each competency at the ACC level and name what consistent and inconsistent demonstration sounds like, so you can recognize both patterns when you hear them. Most people assume that if a coaching behavior isn't good, it's simply absent. The coach just didn't do it. That's not how ICF sees it. The minimum skills requirements describe two distinct categories: behaviors that are consistent with ACC standards and behaviors that are inconsistent. Those are not the same as present and absent. An inconsistent behavior is an active pattern that undermines the coaching quality. Knowing the difference changes how you evaluate. This distinction is worth pausing on. Not present means the behavior didn't show up. Maybe there was no opportunity or the coach missed it. Inconsistent means the coach did something specific that actively works against the competency. Coach primarily gives advice is not the absence of action planning. It's a specific behavior that undermines client autonomy. That's inconsistent with Competency 8 at the ACC level. As a mentor coach, you need to recognize both because your feedback addresses both. Here's what you did well, and here's the pattern that's getting in your way. Competency 3, agreements. The key question is, who is driving the conversation? Consistent behavior. The coach explores the topic with the client, reaches a mutual agreement on the session outcome, and attends to the agenda throughout. Inconsistent. The coach chooses the topic, doesn't confirm the outcome with the client, doesn't notice when the conversation drifts from what they agreed on. The difference is subtle but fundamental. In consistent ACC coaching, the client drives. In inconsistent, the coach does. And sometimes the coach doesn't even realize they've taken the wheel. Competency 4, trust and safety. Consistent, the coach acknowledges, expresses support, explores feelings. Inconsistent, significant interest in their own knowledge, dismissive responses, judgmental tone. Watch for the coach who responds to a client's concern by sharing their own experience at length. That's inconsistent. The coach is demonstrating significant interest in their own view rather than exploring the client's. It often comes from a good place. The coach wants to connect. But in the MSR framework, that connection comes at the cost of the client's space. Competency 5, presence. Consistent, observant, curious, provides space, allows silence. Inconsistent, misses opportunities to explore, interrupts, focused on own performance, leads instead of partners. The red flag here, a coach who fills every pause with another question. That's interfering with the client's process. The client needs space to think, and the coach's anxiety about silence drives them to fill it. That pattern is one of the most common inconsistent behaviors at ACC level, and it's one the coach almost never notices on their own. That's why your observation matters. Competency 6, active listening. Consistent, recognizes feelings, uses the client's language, summarizes accurately. Inconsistent, not responsive to what the client is saying, listening to insert their own knowledge, overly complex summaries that add the coach's interpretation. When a coach summarizes with, "So what you're really saying is," and then adds their own frame, that's inconsistent. They're not confirming, understanding. They're reframing. The test is simple. Would the client recognize themselves in the summary? If the coach's version sounds different from what the client actually said, that's a signal. Competency 7, evoking awareness. Consistent, supports different perspectives, inquires about feelings and beliefs, asks clear, open-ended questions one at a time. Inconsistent, leading questions, coach's agenda dominates, no space for the client to respond, confusing or compound language. Compound questions are the most common inconsistent behavior here. Have you thought about maybe talking to your boss and also considering whether this role is right for you? That's two questions masquerading as one. The client can only answer whichever one they heard last. And the coach has embedded two suggestions in what was supposed to be an open question. Competency 8, client growth. Consistent, asks about learning, supports planning, supports closure. Inconsistent, doesn't invite reflection on what the client learned, insufficient clarity for post-session actions, prescribes specific actions. When the coach says, what you should do is call your manager on Monday and have a direct conversation, that's prescribing. ACC level coaching partners with the client to design their own actions. The inconsistent pattern here is often the coach's expertise showing up uninvited. They know what would work, but the mentor coaching question is, did they let the client figure it out? Before we move on, an important distinction. I wouldn't coach that way is not the same as that's inconsistent with ACC standards. Style preference is not evaluation. An ACC candidate might use narrative coaching techniques, lots of reflection and metaphor. Another might use a solutions-focused approach, efficient and action-oriented. Both can be consistent with the MSR. The standard describes a quality of coaching, not a single correct form. Your first job as an evaluator is to separate your style preference from the behavioral evidence. We'll come back to this when we talk about bias in Unit 7.4. Consistent behaviors describe what ACC coaching sounds like when it's working. Inconsistent behaviors describe specific patterns that pull the coaching off track. As a mentor coach, you need to recognize both because your feedback addresses both. Here's what you did well, and here's the pattern that's getting in your way. You can now recognize what ACC level coaching sounds like and what it doesn't. The question is, how do you use that in your feedback without turning it into an audit? That's the developmental skill. Using MSR language to guide growth, not grade performance.